and the topic I'm going to be talking about is illegal immigration. And basically, illegal immigration has been a controversy, an issue actually, about their status here and the fact that they're how they affect the U.S. And basically, my main claim is that illegal immigration benefits the economy of America. My three main points are that illegal immigrants contribute to local and federal taxes, they increase the percentages of gross domestic products, and that they're paid low wages. So my first claim is that they pay local and federal taxes, and the way that in which they do is through sales and property taxes. And according to the state and local tax data analysis published by the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, undocumented immigrants contribute about $11.6 billion to the economy annually, including nearly $7 billion in sales and excise taxes and $3.6 billion in property taxes. So these illegal immigrants are they go to grocery stores, they buy clothes, they buy ordinary products, or they're contributing to the economy even though they're not citizens. And these immigrants increase the percentage of gross domestic products, and so they work for industries such as farming, fishing, and forestry, and they work more in farms because they get paid low wages, and this benefits these type of agriculture industries. And in Wisconsin, they aid their economy a lot, necessarily because there's an estimated 55,000 workers who are undocumented, and the industries that would miss unauthorized workers that most include farming, fishing, and forestry, where more than 1 in 4 employees is undocumented. And there's a Dairy Business Association that opposes anti-immigrant bill necessarily because it helps them. And then in California, there's this woman called Betty Yee, who is a California state controller, that said undocumented immigrants' labor is worth more than $180 billion a year to California's economy, about equal to the 2015 gross domestic product for the entire state of Oklahoma. Labor for undocumented immigrants is fundamental not just to agriculture, but to childcare, restaurants, hotels, and constructions. Undocumented immigrants make up an estimated 10% of California's workforce, and the work they do is often at the bottom rung of the wage scale. So if this is seen in Wisconsin and California, how illegal immigrants benefit their industries and it's helping gross domestic products increase in America, then that means that illegal immigrants are not just a waste here in the U.S. And since they're paid low wages, my third point, which is that they're paid low wages, is the fact that they get few or no benefits, and the fact that they just get paid less than the average American citizen means that oftentimes that they don't have health care, and they have to pay out of pocket if they need to go to the hospital or something. And also that industries make a large profit out of that, out of paying their employees less. And there's James Parrott, a chief economist of the Fiscal Policy Institute, that he says the liberal economic think tank focusing on taxes and labor in New York says one of the reasons for persistent low wages is that company balance sheets look better when they save on labor costs by cutting salaries and hours. He also states, there's also a study that occurred in May 2014 by a research company, PayScale, says that CDS topped the list for gaps between median employee pay and CEO salary at the 100 largest public traded companies. The median salary for CVS employees was $28,700 in 2013. That year, CEO Larry Merlo made more than $12 million, giving the firm a 422-to-1 executive to median pay ratio. So this states that CVS was the top list for gaps between median employees and CEOs. And most employees also are from DACA, so they're immigrants as well. And these illegal immigrants want to be taken away, want to be returned to where they came from, because people state that the U.S. that they don't benefit the U.S. However, these claims show that illegal immigration benefits the economy in America due to the fact that they pay taxes. They increase the percentage of gross domestic products, and because they're paid low wages.
Thank you. All right, the proposition is very clearly identified. It's simple, straightforward, to the point, so it's easy to follow. The contents of the speech are previewed pretty well. You seem to be rushing a little bit through it, so I think you could take your time there to set this up. I think you could also, for the attention device, talk about the controversies about this, because you kind of put in some of the controversy in the last part of your speech, and it got confusing because it sounded at one point like you're saying the argument is that they want to be sent home, and I'm going, no, wait. That doesn't make any sense at all. I think what you're saying is that there are people who want them to be put out of the country. That's why there's a controversy on this, because you're saying those people are wrong, that there's a benefit to having them in the country, and that's why you have to make this argument. So I think that would make more sense to have that at the beginning and be clearer, because when you watch back on the video, you're going to hear that it came out not the way you meant it to come out. Fortunately, we knew what you meant. But you can't count on us always being that sharp, Some of these people aren't the sharpest tool in the drawer. I'll put myself in that category sometimes too.
Deep.
Yes, there you go. The presentation is pretty well organized. I did have a problem at one point because it seemed like you got to your second point where you're talking about they increase the GDP, and then the reason that they do that is because they're paid low wages. And I thought, oh, well, she started on the third point, which was about low wages, but then we come back to the low wage issue, and so I think that that's a little bit confusing. If you're building a chain of arguments, it makes more sense to keep the arguments sequential and not jump around like that. The information that you had on the taxes, that seemed fine. You gave a source on that. You told us what the impact was or how much it is. That's something that's quantifiable. The impact on jobs in Wisconsin, you've got a good example here. To show that there's some impact. I'm not exactly sure that it's quite as significant as you're talking about there, but that's fine. The quote from the state, I think it's the state controller, who talks about the impact on the economy, $180 billion. That's a good source. It's a good piece of information, although I am uncertain as to how it was derived, and that seems like it's something that could easily be argued about, but you've given us a source and you've used that information, so you've at least attempted to attribute and quantify the impact that's going on there. That's in California. And you mentioned 10% of the workforce in California. I know there's a source for that. I don't know what it is. The information that you talked about in general about lower costs or lower wages because the companies like that, I think the argument that you're making here is a little confusing. In essence, you're saying there's a benefit that comes from exploiting these workers. And that's a good thing. That's how it benefits us, by exploiting them. Now, we're not making value arguments on this situation, but if we were having a debate on this particular point, value arguments would come into play. I think a lot of people would say, the economic advantage that comes from exploiting people is probably not worth it given the harm that we're doing to people by exploiting them. And that, I think, is a little bit inconsistent there. I have no idea why I'm getting a comparison of the average wage worker at CVS versus the CEO. I don't know how it applies to your argument at all. It just seems like it's kind of a random piece of information. So unless you can say that all the average employees are illegal immigrants and the CEO is not, then maybe that would illustrate the point. But I don't think that you had any information that said that. You're rushing the presentation quite a bit, and when you end, it feels like you hit a sudden break and stopped, and I don't even realize, I think people might not even realize that you were done. So I did like that there was a summary, though. You did have a summary at the end where you're trying to remind us of what the point was. All right, thank you.